Okay, welcome back to another one of my video tutorials, and at last I've got back to the fish to make yet another design from the one graphic. Now, in the previous videos we created this design, and this is quite a large one, but you can resize it to suit. But I'm going to leave it large today to show you how to do the applique version. Now, we've got an outline here of a triple run, but with applique you might like to have a better coverage of your edges, and so a satin would be better. Now, you could just convert the triple run to a satin and you would get a satin outline, but I'm going to show you how that's not always, well, it doesn't work out very successfully. If you come over to your colour film and break it up into its individual objects and scroll down to the bottom, you'll see your outline here. And if you select that and right click then on the object, you'll get your object properties, and here's the stitch type, triple, and we can go down to satin and go OK. We'll just go OK. It takes a little while to convert it, but if we zoom in here, we can see that we get all sorts of funny points overlapping each other. And if I go into or go out of the artistic view, we can see, I'll zoom in even further, that these overlaps are quite extensive and can create quite lumpy areas in the design, and it's a result of the fact that with the triple run, obviously that was a lot lighter weight, and the blackwork run goes backwards and forwards to be able to get around the entire area, and so in my opinion I wouldn't like that as my finished satin edge. So I'm just going to go back to show all and undo, and I'm back to my triple run. Now, I would prefer to actually digitize my satin edge itself manually and then remove the triple run outline. That doesn't take very long at all, but I'll just do a few and then pause the video so you don't get bored with this. But just select your open object tool and select satin, and I'm going to go to the object properties and select 3.5. I don't want it too bulky, because if I shrink this design down, I don't want a really heavy satin edge. I wouldn't go any narrower than 3.5 though, or you won't get enough coverage of your fabric. 3.5 millimeters. So if you're in inches, select one that suits you. And I'm not going to worry about the, I'll just go OK there. I'm not going to worry about the underlay, except to make sure that my auto underlay is selected. So make sure there's a little box around the auto underlay. I did have a little hiccup with putting in a manual underlay or two manual underlays before I tried to make the applique using the advanced applique tool, and so I've decided to leave the underlay adjustments until the very end, and I'll show you how to do that. But once you've selected your open object tool, it's just a matter of, like any other digitizing, left click for points or changes in direction, and right click for curves. So I'm left clicking there and I'm right clicking down this curved line here. If it's a long sweeping curve, don't put too many nodes in. You don't need to. You get a much smoother curve with less nodes. Where you've got tight curves, more nodes are necessary. Left click there and press enter, and that has created my satin stitch for the first fin. And then move on to your next fin. Left click, right click, right click, and this is what I mean about a few nodes extra around this curve. You can always adjust them later. I don't like that bit there, but I'll adjust it later, and keep going around like that. So I'm just going to pause the video now to finish the fins, and I'll come back. Okay, so I've done all the fins and also this dividing line from the face to the body. Now I'm going to switch to the closed object tool to make the satin outline, which is the body and the face all in one. And my last stitch at the moment is here. This is where I ended, so try and think in a logical way. You can always change the stitch order later, but I want all these stitches ending underneath the outline of the body, so I did them first, and I went round in an anti-clockwise motion. I could have gone clockwise. And I'm not worrying about my jump stitches just at the moment, because when you do the applique it does change a few things. So let's just digitize around the body here. Just a few more nodes around that curve because it's a little bit tighter, and then I can smoothly go along here. I'm right clicking all the way around. I'm going to have to now I'm just going to zoom in here, do lots of little nodes around that mouth. Now remembering that the satin stitch is wider, so you don't need to be as accurate as a running stitch, because it will cover a bigger area. Now I've got a funny curve there which I'll adjust later, because if you go back stitch and try and get it right, it takes you longer. I'm going to zoom out again and come back up to where I started and press my enter button. Okay, let's go show all again. That looks pretty good. Now the only things you need to be careful of now are, in version 6 you need your stitches overlapping. In version 5 your digitizing lines must overlap, so you need to be a bit more careful there. The advanced applique won't work if your digitizing lines don't overlap. But the other thing you need to check is just zoom in to make sure you haven't got any little pokey out bits like these here, because they're going to look ugly, aren't they? We just need to cross over. So let's just use our select tool, and that's the outline selected because that's the last thing I digitized. I want to select this one here and go to my reshape tool and just pull that line back a bit so that you can cover those stitches. Press enter and you can see now I haven't got any pokey outs there. Back to select, and on this one the same thing. Reshape. Now of course if you haven't overlapped enough you'll need to pull your lines in further, and particularly in version 5 if you find your advanced applique is not working, try moving your digitizing lines in as far as possible without having any overlap, pointy out bits, for want of a better description, so that you do actually cross your digitizing lines. The digitizing line would have run down the center of here, so this one, you know, needs to go just across it. But with version 6, as I'm working in now, you can just have the stitches overlapping as I have here, so I'm not too worried whether this is actually crossing or not the center line. Okay, I'm just going to pause the video again so that I can run around and tidy up all those pointy bits. Okay, I've tidied up all my pointy bits, and so now I have a good satin outline that I'm happy with. It covers all the other stitching there. So I can now go over to my film strip, select my triple run outline that I no longer need, and hit my delete button. And there we have it. Now the applique is going to be using the satin outlines. It's not going to be using these fill stitches here, although I will want to stitch those on top of my applique fabric later because they're open and the fabric can show through. But at the moment all I'm concerned with is getting fabric in between those satin outlines. So what I need to do is select all my satin pieces, and so start with the first one, hold my shift key down and select the last one. I've got all the satin outlines selected now. I could have selected them individually by holding down my control button, but that was the easiest way. And if we go over to our advanced applique icon, it's now available, so we can left click on that. And it will take a little while, but as soon as it's ready you will get your applique toolbox opening with your fabric positions showing here. So I'm just going to zoom out so you can actually see, I'm just trying to get a good size here. And we can see the different areas. The hatched area means that I can put fabric in any of those areas. So the next thing I want to do is put my fabric in. So let's click on place fabric and colour in patches. Now if you don't want to actually look for fabrics, you can just go for colours. So just click down here on the place the colour, and then you can just put whatever fabric you like, but you can just get a general idea of colour. I find this a little bit easier than trying to look for a specific fabric that's going to be roughly like my fabric. It just depends, you know, how closely you want to get to the finished product you're trying to produce. But if time is a limitation, then colours are quicker. And we've got 3 palettes of colours. We've got our pastels, our middle range, and our darks. I'm just going to go to the middle range here so that they're a bit brighter, and I'm going to place the same colour fabric in the fins as the body, and perhaps a different colour in the head. The reason I'm doing this is I've shrunk this down now. Now assume that you might want to applique a fish about this big. So that's roughly 10 centimetres across at the moment, 4 inches, maybe a little bit bigger. If I was to do a separate fabric in each of these fins, I could do it, but they will be tiny little pieces I have to cut around if they were a different colour to the body. And with my different type of fill stitch over the top of the fabric, it's going to give a different look anyway. So to make life easy for myself, I'm going to make all this area one colour. And to do this, I'm going to pick a green here, and I'm going to click in all the areas I want to be green. Okay, now don't worry that it's hiding the stitching at the moment. It will in some and not in others. Oh, there it goes, it's hidden again. We're just trying to get the colours in there. Now at the moment still that's going to treat each of those as individual colours. Let's put a different colour in the face. So let's choose a blue and put that in the face. Okay, now what I want to do is merge these green patches so that it will actually tack down one piece of fabric, so I only have to cut around one piece of fabric. So we're going to go back on our toolbox, and we've got an option here to merge patches together. So left click on that, and it tells you what to do. Click on a patch, then click on an adjoining patch that you want to merge with it. So I'm going to click on the body, and I want to merge it with the fin. Now you can't see this, but the white line actually changes to red when you click on it, and because I've done a red outline, that was a bit silly of me, wasn't it? It's not showing up. But once you've clicked on an area, it turns red, and then when you click on the adjoining area, you'll get the white outline going right around. So at the moment now I've got one piece of fabric doing the top fin and the body. Now if I go to another piece, it's just a white outline. I need to left click again on that main area, and if I zoom right in, you might just, yes, you can see the red line there going around. I'll zoom back out again, and I want to join this one on, so I left click on there, and you can see now it's included that tail piece. So once again, left click on that and left click on the next piece, and we're slowly getting, I'll just zoom out a little bit more, left click on the main part and left click on the adjoining part. Now I've got one tack down, or one placement cutting line and tack down line going around the entire piece of green fabric, and I'll have a separate one going around the blue face. Now you could use fabric in here, or you could use mylar under this design quite happily, because you've got a lacy effect of stitching on top, or you will have. If I was using mylar, I'll just mention this, I would remove the fabric from the face. In fact, I might still do that to show you how to do that. So we'll go back. Because there's no there's only the eye embroidered on there, you'd have one big sheet of mylar with no stitching on top. It doesn't look very attractive, and so we can just leave the well, you could put a piece of fabric in there instead of the mylar, or you could leave it so that the underlying fabric of the project, the base fabric, is showing through. It's entirely up to you. But if you need to remove fabric or colour from patches, the tool is here. Left click on it and just come across and left click, and once again you've got no fabric there. So now I've only got fabric in the body and fins. Once you're happy with the placement of your fabric and you've merged your patches together, go back, and we've got stitching properties options. We can set the colours automatically. That is, the software will choose 3 different colours for the stitching, for the placement, cutting and tack down lines, and you can still thread your machine with any colour you like. You can leave it to set the colours automatically. You can leave it to set the stitch types automatically, whether the tack down be a running stitch or a zigzag, or etc. Because it's a satin outline that I'm using, I'm happy with that, because I quite like the zigzag tack down, and that's the default. If I wanted to manually change it, I've done other videos on the advanced applique that show you how to do that. So I would click on here and set them manually. So I'm happy with all of that. So in fact, I've actually done my applique. I'm going to close that, and I'm back to my design area. Now the big problem is, if we look at our film strip, is that before the applique happens, all these other individual objects of the fancy stitching over the body and the eye, etc., are all going to embroider first and the applique last. If I move the applique to the top, which I'm going to do now, they will embroider afterwards, which is fine for the eye, but these pieces here, if I zoom right in, let's left click off that. It's very hard to see. I might just change the colour of this piece, for instance, so you can see. So this is the body fancy stitching, and let's change it to purple so it shows up. Okay, now you can see that it's actually stitching on top of the satin stitch. If we go to the artistic view, it's stitching. That doesn't look very attractive at all. What we want is the fancy stitching to be after the fabric is laid down and tacked down, trimmed and tacked down, and before the final satin stitching. But unfortunately, we've got all our satin stitching, tack down and placement lines locked together in this applique. So I'm going to undo to get this back to the bottom, how it was originally. So we've got all our stitching and then the applique at the end. And what I'm going to do is I've selected the applique, and I'm going to go over to my break apart tool, left click. Now you can see, if I come down the film strip, that I've got my placement line stitching around. Then you lay your fabric on, and then you've got your trimming line, which will stitch your fabric in place and allow you to cut around it. And then you've got your tack down stitch, which holds all those little fluffy edges down before you start your satin stitch. So now we know we can move our other objects in this gap here after the tack down, but before the final satin stitch. So here we go. Let's go up to the top and select all those objects. Starting here, coming down to there, and we're going to move the whole lot down. So left click and drag, and you've got your little box there, and just come down here, whoops, up a bit, and just before the satin stitch starts, drop it in there. Okay, now we can see that, I'll just change the colour of that again. So it's obvious. Where's the purple? There we go. That the actual fancy stitching is tucked under the satin stitch. Let's go 1 to 1. Okay. Now the other thing I mentioned earlier was the underlay. So let's just have a look at that in the satin stitch. So if we go to our colour film down here and select all our satin stitch, hopefully we'll be able to change the underlay all at once. Shift, and so I've got all my satin stitch selected. I'm going to right click and we can go to the effects tab, the underlay. Now the automatic's actually greyed out. I've got apply underlay 1, which is a zigzag, so I think the applique did that. What I want to do is apply a second underlay, which I like to use, which is the edge walk. Okay, whenever I'm doing satin, I always like to have an edge walk underlay. It just gives that really crisp edge to your satin stitch. Zigzag will be fine for the main part. Double zigzag would be too much, particularly considering that you have got a zigzag tack down line underneath that satin as well. And if you wanted a really bold satin stitch outline, you could use the double zigzag, but I think zigzag's fine, and so we'll go okay there. The other thing to check too now is, let's have a look at the jump stitches. So let's go back to the go out of the artistic view, and I'm going to click off here. Now it's a bit hard to see, but let's just zoom in so we can have a look. The quickest way to check your jump stitches is a quick cursory look like this, and it seems to me that it has run between the areas. Let's have a look. Sorry about all that zooming, I've probably made you a bit seasick now. Let's just go show all, and let's just have a look at our view and a slow redraw, and we can speed that up. Oh, that's gone outside the area. There we go, there's our slow redraw, and I'm going to make it a little bit faster just because I'm just going to be looking out for jump stitches right now. So let's left click on there. So we've got our tack down line there happening, our fancy stitching happening, and then there is a jump stitch there, but it's covered by the satin. Okay, the only one that's not covered by the satin is this one here. Now I didn't notice that earlier. That's where the slow redraw is handy. Now you can slow it down, obviously that was really fast for this video, but I want to move this jump stitch, and so there's two ways you can get rid of those jump stitches. Let's just close that. You can move the start point of this satin stitch up to here. So let's select that one and the reshape tool, and you can see the start is here, and if I move that up there and click on enter, that jump stitch now will run along there and will be happily covered by the satin stitch. If you want to, you can insert a row of running stitches there if you think that you're going to miss that jump stitch. And in your test, so if you do, you could insert a row of running stitches between. But I think when you've got satin outlines, they often cover up very well any jump stitches. So that was really the only one I'm going to worry about. Everything else seems to be covered nicely. That one goes very close. If we zoom right in, see that dotted line there, that's the jump stitch. It goes very close, so I would just have to see how that's stitched out. If I didn't want that jump stitch there, I would just zoom back. So that's between this piece and the tail. So this piece is ending there and then it's jumping to the tail. So let's go with our edit button, so just hit E on your keyboard and click on your zigzag. We're on the underlay, so let's just zoom through that. Okay, and here comes the satin stitch. So I'm using the down arrow on my keyboard to jump through that so that I can show the red part is the bit that's already stitched. Now I've gone to the right hand pointing arrow to fine tune to the end, and I'm left clicking. I'm just doing the tie off there, you see those little stitches, and now I've got a jump stitch. To avoid that, all I need to do is to select my open object tool, select the outline stitch as a single run, and because I'm in edit, it's going to insert this straight after this piece, whereas if I just digitized it and then I would have to move it there. So I'm just digitizing a single run from one area to the next, enter, and there's the single run there, and I no longer have a jump stitch. If I go zoom right in, that dotted line has gone. Okay, so that's how you can quickly get rid of jump stitches that you may be worried about. Okay, the vector graphic for this design, for this fish design, is available from my website. Just go to the online shop and then click on the sub-menu artwork. And if you want to see the other, or how we got the original design from the vector graphic to this point before we did the applique, there are a couple more videos in this series. One vector into several different embroideries, they're titled. Parts 1, 2 and 3 I think are up there already. This will make part 4.